everybody. Hey, I'm Dr. Jake Clendenning on behalf of my partner, Michael Laversi. I am here today with Steve Frazier. We were talking earlier, right before this, and I love the irony of this, is you guys have listened to this podcast forever, and we are very much a fireside, kind of coffee cup chat kind of conversation. And Steve has a book, Release the Coffee Cuffs. So I find this wildly ironic in just how the conversation is going to go that is actually about releasing that kind of entertaining. So good morning, Steve.
Good
Tell
morning.
the audience a little bit about you. What's going on?
Well, first of all, 95% of the podcasts I'm on, the hosts are drinking coffee or tea. Okay. So
This is water today. Just so
yeah,
you know, it's a
and,
coffee cup, but it is full of water.
and I'm drinking Swiss water processed decaf, organic. Okay.
Nice.
So 99.9% caffeine free, but I get so much stuff in my coffee I can't taste it. Doesn't matter. I like the warm beverage. That's part of what societal pressure have that warm beverage in the morning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been an entrepreneur for 40 years, and the first 23 were in the restaurant business. My wife and I owned and operated 6 different restaurants, and I lived on caffeine. I was chronic user, and I often had to drink a beer or a tequila. We had a Mexican restaurant and bar to go to sleep at night. And I had a health scare 11 years ago and had premature ventricular contractions. Okay, they're called PVCs. I thought I was going to die, heart attack. It's a common thing. I just happen to be very susceptible to feeling it. And so as I'm in the emergency room and I'm on the EKG, watching my heart go up and down, and I'm thinking, the doctor comes in, he said, "You're going to be fine. You're not dying." I said, "So what is this?" And he told me, and I said, "So what causes this?" He says, "Well, stress." I said, "Okay." And he looks at me and he kind of chuckles and he said, "And caffeine." And I had been traveling. I had been 45 minutes at home when I had this attack. And I called my wife. I turned around. She took me to the ER. I had a couple of smaller ones like this. So I quit caffeine. That was 11 years ago. Well, like every good person that's addicted to anything, I said, I can handle this. I can do this. So about 3 years later, I went back on caffeine. And 6 years later, which was about 2 years ago, I was completely dependent on caffeine for my energy. I wasn't sleeping well. And so I quit cold turkey, which I would not recommend you do. I just putting it out there, taper, replace, whatever. If you go cold turkey, you're going to get this massive headache, which is adenosine receptors opening up in your brain. Okay. And you have massive fatigue, massive brain fog, because caffeine is a drug. It's a psychoactive stimulant drug. It's legal. It's socially accepted and often socially promoted. And so no one thinks anything of it. I did a podcast a couple months ago, and I was using the analogy to the host of a salmon swimming upstream in my journey here, my mission. And he chuckled and he said, "No, Steve, you're a salmon swimming against a tsunami." And he is absolutely right. The cognitive dissonance on caffeine is incredible. And for your listeners, cognitive dissonance is where we have been programmed all of our lives to believe certain things. And when objective truths come in, we choose not to believe them because of our programming. Mm-hmm. And, in the United States alone, 85% of people drink caffeine every day. That's 200 to 300 million people. And my mission is not to get them to quit, because I can't. Because we all have free will and free won't. I don't control what goes in your body. You do.
Okay, however, so let's back that one up real quick. Don't blow by that quote. That's a really good one. That's really good. I have not heard anyone say that. We all have.
It comes from my wife, just so you know.
And
free will, free won't. Correct.
That is beautiful, Steve.
And you can use that anytime you want.
Oh yeah, plagiarizing the snot out of that. That is
That's
really quality.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. You have free will and you have free won't, because of our programming. I
Yep.
agree with that completely. So, not to interrupt you, you were on a
No,
roll. I was like,
no.
man, don't blow by that.
Yeah. So we have this huge cognitive dissonance, and there's so much in social media that caffeine is good for you. It makes you live longer. It makes you healthier. And these are lies. Okay. There is no documented study. In my book, I have over 300 sites and references. Okay. So what I'm talking to you about here is not my opinion. It is facts. Okay. When I have an opinion, I will tell you what it is. Okay. One of my opinion is I can't make anybody do anything. Okay. Maybe that's a fact, I guess. I don't, that's all subjective. But the fact is that, so then 13 years ago, and this was before I had my incident, my wife got really sick, chronically ill. 2 years, we went to 17 different doctors, which she calls ologists. Okay. My doctor's a PhD college professor. Okay. She knows, she gets this whole thing. 17 doctors told her to walk out the room because they didn't know what was wrong with her. Some of them blamed her, said it was all in her head. Some of them said you just got to go on massive narcotics. My daughter was just beginning her natural health practice, and she walked in the house. She said, "I'm going to test Brenda." 15 minutes later, she said, "You have Lyme disease from the waist down." And that was confirmed 4 days later by her mentor. So for the last 11 years, we have been this, because for 2 years, undiagnosed, massive damage to everything, thyroids, adrenals. They took her gallbladder out, which she didn't have to have taken out, because we can deal with stones naturally with different supplements. And ironically, Coca-Cola actually helps the supplements break the stones down. The point is, we went on a natural health journey. And then several years ago, I became a self-sabotage coach. And in self-sabotage, you have different pillars, and one of them is physical. And I looked at the physical pillars where we self-sabotage, and we all do this, okay? And we all do it every day. But there's caffeine, there's narcotics, there's nicotine, there's alcohol, overeating, lack of sleep. And I looked at caffeine and I thought, I have an opportunity here because of this huge number of people drinking it, that maybe I can influence people that are being negatively affected health-wise. Okay, now I'm going to say this. This is a bold statement, and I stand by it. And that is, if you drink caffeine every day, you are not sleeping like you should. Okay, and you don't control this. Your body does. Caffeine disrupts your circadian rhythm, and it disrupts your 4 stages of sleep, and it shortens stage 3, and stage 4 is where you rest and you repair, and you don't control this. So arguing about this is immaterial, because there's no argument. Okay, because this is your body, and you don't control. Once the caffeine goes in, it goes to your adrenal glands, it goes to your brain. You get this massive adrenaline hit, you get this massive dopamine hit, you get this massive cortisol hit, and you feel good. And I will not deny that. Okay, now here's one of the problems with that scenario is that if you drink caffeine all day, you're no longer getting the buzz. You are only reaching a baseline. And if that makes sense, okay, you're just trying to get back to what's normal. And as you do this, and I don't know how many of these podcasts you do, you're my 46th podcast in the last 4 months. And so I have a lot of podcast experience with different hosts. And what happens is that we need to just make sure that people understand that caffeine could be affecting your health, and you don't know it, because realize that doctors and nurses also have cognitive dissonance. And I'm not disrespecting them here. But if the doctor's drinking 5 cups of coffee or 6 cups of coffee and having a Red Bull in the middle of the afternoon to get through his day, and a patient comes in with classic caffeine symptoms, which I'll get to in a minute, he does not think about caffeine because it's not happening to him. And so
right, that's totally true. And I think
right.
there's a couple of points that I want to reiterate that you made, and one is, and I've long said this, is there's a tendency in Western medicine, traditional, what not, I didn't even want to say traditional, industrial Western medicine. Let's go that way, to prescribe. Right?
Yes.
Like you got to that point of, well, we can't figure it out, so we're going to prescribe this thing. We're going to go after the symptoms. And
Yes.
there's a, I think to your point, that the doctors have a lot of this going on. They're using, I use this reference all the time, and this is, they're using the snorkel questions versus the scuba questions, right?
That's
They're up on the,
fantastic.
they're snorkeling along in the pool, going, okay, what are your, oh, you got a headache and you got some bowel issues and you got this and that, well, okay, well, it could be this, we standardly prescribe this, and they move on,
Yep.
right? And it's prescribed for surface level. And only when you become, do I, until you go to a specialist after you've been like in the hospital and it goes down the road a long way, before they start asking deeper questions in the specialist. But a generalist is going to ask some of those snorkel questions. So in that regard, I would agree with you. I don't think, I don't do a lot of Western medicine in general. We don't put stuff in our bodies, and we're pretty careful about that. From a general practitioner, I would bet you at least 80%. We can go Pareto's principle here, right? The 80-20 rule. At least 80% are not aware that this particular issue is what causes these issues, that caffeine would be a root cause,
Right.
because so many of them don't want to talk lifestyle. Like,
No.
they don't want to talk lifestyle. They're like, oh, well, that part's broken. We're just going to prescribe some sort of narcotic medication to reduce the swelling, or instead of go to
Yep.
lifestyle. What caused it? And I love that that's the mission for you, that you're talking,
Yep.
what's the root cause, and that you found it. Yeah, and the same happened for you, right? You had to get smacked upside the
Oh,
head
and I
in
did.
order for you to say, the doctor said it's one of these two things. Um, so in that, you said, all right, I'm gonna kill off caffeine. When
Yep.
you said one of those two things. Let me ask you this: what'd you do about your stress?
I talk to God regularly. How's that?
I'll take it.
And
I'll
that
take
takes
that
and
all
that
day
takes
long. Hey,
that takes care of my stress.
I love that. That's
Uh,
that's a that's a brilliant answer. Well said.
I take it off. I take it off of my shoulders, and he carries me.
Yeah.
And so, and I'll leave it at that. But that's how I deal with it.
Fair
And
enough. So let me
and
let me
so
ask you this one, because this was popping up in my head there. This is totally off. Well, it's not off topic, but it's off the list of questions. Um, so there's been a push, again, Western medicine, and a little bit in the holistic space, to those that are, now we have a thing. When you and I were coming up, we did not have ADHD. Did not exist. Like, that was just not. We were just hyperactive kids. That's how it was.
yep.
Now there's a push to prescribe caffeine in ADHD to improve the focus. And for some reason, there's a chemical. Have you done any, like, have you looked into any research in there? Or like, what's been any pushback about that? Using caffeine as actually a prescribed drug
Right.
to help with some ailments.
My One of my granddaughters was a preemie, and 5 weeks, and so they had her in ICU, and they gave her caffeine to stimulate her. Okay. I am not a medical doctor, and I'm not giving medical advice.
Sure.
But if
No,
you're
I
if
agree.
you're if you're giving your kid caffeine to get rid of his ADHD, all you're doing is throwing gasoline on the fire, man.
Okay.
Okay, because one of the things this is what happens. Caffeine makes you anxious, it makes you nervous, and it makes you have anxiety. Okay, these are some of the symptoms of chronic caffeine use. And to make the observation, and I'm not. This is a great question, because I don't believe, from the research that I've done, that this is going to cause. It's only going to cause harm. It will cause no good. Okay. Now, if you look back, you talk about lifestyle. You brought that up. Okay, lifestyle is something that I address in the book, in my coaching program, because when you quit caffeine, you're not just quitting a drug. You are creating a completely new
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle because your life's going to change. I mean, as I handed my book to friends and family, the first thing they'd say to me is, "You can't take my coffee from me." Well, I have no intention. I have no intention. I don't care. I mean, I'm a nice guy. But if you want to put this in your body, that's up to you. Now, you look at kids, okay, and you look at what caffeine does to, and I'm just going to hit these fast. We don't have a lot of time to go into all the details. My micro mission of my influencing of spreading knowledge is to, and I will tell you right out, it is to everybody that listens to this. If you know somebody that is pregnant and is drinking caffeine, I would ask you to share these facts with them. Okay. And these are all documented studies. Okay. What does caffeine do to the fetus? Well, it causes low birth weight. It can cause miscarriages. It can cause stillbirths. It can cause ADHD. It can cause ADD. That's because when the baby, there's an enzyme in our bodies that processes, it's in our livers that processes caffeine. It's called the CYP1A2 enzyme. Babies don't develop this until they're 3 to 6 months old. So when they're in the womb, they process no caffeine. They hold it. Now, what it does is it also then plugs up the adenosine receptors. And so their body's not communicating well, and it's not developing like it should. Then they're born. 12 hours later, they start screaming bloody murder. Oh, this is normal. Your baby's colicky. You know, we all know that when drug addicted moms come in, they deal with the babies, right? They deal with this. They have to have withdrawal. The babies can die literally from drug withdrawal. How many people asked, "Oh, was mom drinking caffeine the whole pregnancy?" Maybe 1 out of a million. I don't know. I mean, I don't. That's a hypothetical, theoretical question.
Right.
Now, baby comes out, goes through withdrawal. Where are we with this? You know, nobody's asking these questions. These are hard questions, and they're real. You know, I went to a funeral of a 7-month-old fetus of my niece. Okay, now I'm not saying it's from caffeine, so don't misunderstand me. Okay, when you go and see a 7-month-old fetus in an open casket funeral, you might say to yourself, Jane, my friend, is pregnant and she's drinking copious amounts of caffeine. Maybe I should talk to her about this, because what's this? Is this too big of a sacrifice to ask you to quit caffeine while you're pregnant? I don't think so. Okay, that's my personal opinion.
Fair.
It's opinion, but it's a realistic question for the health of your baby, because realize that you and I have the ability, by spreading this information, and you didn't know this coming in, but we could possibly save a life.
Mm-hmm.
Just think about that. I mean, how many podcasts have I done, and how many podcasts have you done, and how many people do we talk to that actually save lives? Pretty rare. Okay, there's some doctors that do it, you know, with heart attacks, with that kind of thing. Otherwise, we actually have the ability here, because if I also have 2 miscarriages in my family. You know, I have 2 grandkids that I don't have today. Now, again, I'm not telling you that this is all caused by caffeine, because by no means is it. But what if you're that one person that is? You know, what if you're that one person that's trying to conceive, and you and your husband are both drinking caffeine? Because caffeine dramatically affects men with their testosterone and their sperm mobility and motility and their libido. And it also affects women because it restricts blood flow to the uterus. And so the egg doesn't receive the sperm as well. And here's a fun fact to know and tell for anybody. Women process caffeine at different levels during their menstrual cycle. And during the luteal phase, which is the 14 through 28 phase, 28-day phase, they process caffeine 70% slower. So the half-life of caffeine goes from 5 to 8 hours to 8 to 12 hours. So that woman, now this is not necessarily a pregnant woman. She has a cup of coffee, a regular cup of coffee at noon. She still has half that caffeine at 10 o'clock. And so what happens in the sleep stages, and I mentioned this, you know, during the stage 3 sleep, that's where men produce testosterone. That's where women produce estrogen. That is where our body repairs muscles. And when that's disrupted, it is not only delayed, but it's also shortened. And then you got stage 4. And That is where you get REM sleep. That's where you have dreams. That's where your subconscious is actually doing some repair in your brain. Again, delayed and shortened. Now you have 4 to 6 sleep cycles in a night. So if you're disrupted on each one of those because of your circadian rhythm is disrupted, you wake up tired. And what do?
Grab
You
a cup of coffee.
cup of coffee.
Grab a Coke, grab a Pepsi, grab a Mountain Dew. Yep.
And the worst thing to do is do that. Best thing to do is look at the sun. That helps your cortisol go up. That's your natural circadian rhythm. And have some lemon water that rehydrates your cells. Okay. Now I put all kinds of stuff in my lemon water, so I'm not even going to get into that because that's a whole nother podcast.
It really is. Yeah.
But I put all kinds of stuff in there and I drink it. And in the first chapter of my book, I have anecdotal stories. And it was originally the last chapter. And as I put it together, I realized that it was probably the most powerful chapter in the book because anybody that reads it can see themselves in there. You see it. And 100% of the people said, I have better sleep. I haven't slept this well in decades. Mm-hmm. And what foundation is, or sleep is the foundation to health. Okay, you can't out supplement poor sleep because you can't get it back.
100%. So with your book, Release the Coffee Cuffs, and it's CUFFS. I know that everybody wants to say release the coffee cups, probably, but it's CUFFS cuffs, like handcuffs. Release the coffee cuffs. Where can they get this book?
Best place is on my website, and that's releasethecoffeecuffs.com. Now you have some options on there where you can get it. You can also go to Amazon. You can get it on Kindle. Over the winter, I'm going to create a Audible version. I'm going to read it and record it. And that's why.
Okay, so I'll pause you on that because I just finished doing that on my book.
Did you really? Oh, man.
Prepare Thyself. That is an amazing. It's a cool project to listen to after the fact. Man, is that effort, because we speak differently than we write. We speak differently than we read. So there's plan to practice the first couple chapters for 10, 20 times so you can get in that move. Because as soon as you hit record, it's different. And there's some great technology out there to be able to get it done. And I will tell you, the price of your audiobook should be twice what the paperback was, because everybody wants the cheap audiobook. No, it's twice as much work. It's a ton of work. And you're doing it uncaffeinated. Man, good for you. And I'll tell the audience, I've massively reduced my caffeine, my intake. I'm down to 1 cup a day. Because of what Steve is saying here, quitting cold turkey. I've tried that before. It's a drug addiction thing. The headaches, the migraines, you feel terrible. There's a couple of other books that will support this. It's not just Steve's book. So Miracle Morning would be a great one. He talks about drink some lemon water, look at the sun. That totally comes out of that. So it comes out of a lot of things, but it's also in that book. So look at that. The other one I would tell you to, and it's a good one on audiobook, is Relentless. And that was the coach for Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. And he talks about having those guys stop drinking caffeine and stop eating sugar, and what it will do to them in 3 days and what happens for them in 5. It's beautiful from that regard. So if you need some additional proof, social proof out there, look at Relentless, look at Miracle Morning. There's a mountain of research around this concept. And Release the Coffee Cuffs, you can get it on releasethecoffeecuffs.com. Soon coming out on audiobook, man. That's super cool. What's the last thing you'd want to leave our audience with today in the last minute here?
I'll give you another one of my Brendaisms, okay? And that is, and this is part of my mission, okay? But these are her words. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. However, you can make it thirsty.
Nice.
And you and I, our role here is to make people thirsty for knowledge. I am pro health and pro knowledge. I am not anti-caffeine. The book is not anti-caffeine. I don't bash don't bash it. I just tell the truth. And, you know, cognitive dissonance says we don't always want to hear the truth.
Yeah.
And so, you know, my message is, if you know somebody, please share this with them. And perhaps that someone is you.
Amen to that, Steve. Hey, I really appreciate your time today. Can't wait for our audience to hear this. ReleaseTheCoffeeCuffs.com. Steve Frazier, thank you again. And on behalf of my friend Michael Labersi, it is your turn to disrupt.